Okay, our last speaker is Jim Fajkowski. Very simple introduction. He's an intellectual property lawyer with a company here in Boston. I think we all can guess kind of what topics Jim is going to address here that are of interest to all of us.
Great. Thank you, Val. My name is James Fajkowski. I'm a partner in the intellectual property group in Gates, Boston. Do a lot of work with companies around the world. We have offices in Beijing, Tokyo, Hong Kong, Shanghai, Taipei, and throughout the world. In a lot of instances, people try to look for ways to measure innovation, and intellectual property creation is something that some economists use and statisticians use to try to calibrate where growth is happening. And I'm going to jump around a little bit in time, but right now we're seeing really big numbers being put up in China. U.S. companies file in China, Chinese companies filing in U.S. And in terms of the number of patents that are being filed in Asia and in China in particular, it's going to eclipse Germany probably in the next 3 or 4 years, and it's going to eclipse the U.S. probably in the next 5 or 6. And there's some caveats with that, but just wanted to give you that as where we see things going. So certainly we see a lot of innovation, taking the assumption that patents equal innovation. The other side of the intellectual property coin is they can be impediments to innovation. People can file patents that are not quote-unquote invention patents. So in China, there are invention patents, which is a classic Thomas Edison type patent that it gets examined by the patent office. People look at it, and it's been vetted by a group of people that try to attack it. The other types of patents that exist are utility models or design patents, which really get you pay a fee and they're stamped. And a lot of the litigation right now in China, which is actually greater than the number of patent suits pending in the U.S., is local manufacturers and people fighting at a local level on those sorts of patents that haven't been really vetted. So there's a question of, is there a bolus of IP in the system that's really not a good proxy for innovation? And one reason that makes this interesting is historically. So the U.S.'s patent history goes back to the Constitution. And in China, the patent law that basically set things in motion was in 1984. And then patents, again, are jurisdictional. So it's in each country has its own IP regime. In 2001, China joined the TRIPS Treaty, which basically allows for one international application that can be dropped into individual countries and then prosecuted as an invention patent. And so there's this tension of what's going to happen. Now, historically, U.S. companies going into China for a long period of time, and it varies by industry. So pharmaceutical companies have always pretty much filed worldwide. With respect to China, many of our clients, in the 1995, 2001 internet bubble were not pursuing protection in China. There was a lot of uncertainty. There was a tension between imitation and innovation in the system, and people really weren't sure what was going to happen in terms of how the policies were going to play out. Fast forward to 2008, when we had the economic downturn in the U.S., we saw a lot of our clients cutting Europe, cutting other jurisdictions, reducing their U.S. filings, reducing their overall spend as they were trying to kind of regroup in terms of where their R&D was going. But the numbers in China were continuing to increase and actually outpaced the U.S. during that period of time. So we're seeing a lot of changes, and we're seeing basically a move towards having IP and recognizing that intellectual property is going to have an important role in the way that the businesses interact with each other, whether it's manufacturers interacting now or whether it's changes that are coming at the levels of Samsung, HTC, other people that are tied up in the mobile battles that are spanning Apple and Google and Android. We're seeing a change in terms of in-house counsel in Asian companies recognizing that innovation and how these things play out are going to adopt certain things that have happened in the U.S. We're seeing people buying and selling IP in China. There was an article recently, one of the advantages of coming into the system now is you get to leapfrog some of the growing pains and some of the changes. So some of the financial companies in the U.S. have been trying to create IP funds and ways to do investment in IP, but that's happening in China right now. And so they're leapfrogging a lot of the periods of time where those types of financial instruments, those ways to pool and license IP, and it took a long time to figure out, and they can set up the systems right now, with the history that's in place. And I realize I'm running a little bit short on time with all the questions that we may have, so if one of the volunteers needs to tackle me, I understand completely. So one of the tensions is going to be how the enforcement plays out, and I'm focusing on patents. The kind of the hot button areas are counterfeiting in terms of software and music, and I think it's just going to take infrastructure changes over time. We're seeing a lot of people looking at ways to handle management of IP on a technology front. whether it's kind of heartbeats coming back from a mobile device to authenticate someone's use. Those are ways that you can implement change and innovation and actually have companies formed to do that, and at the same time it helps cause a shift in terms of cultural norms and a recognition of once the systems are in place, it benefits all the regional and local competitors so that they can avail themselves of the courts and basically have a firm footing that they compete with everybody else and understand that their innovations and their intellectual property is going to be protected. One of the advantages of some of the numerous suits that are happening with both the petty patents, the non-examined patents, is that it's causing the judiciary in China to get a lot of training. And historically in the United States, a lot of federal judges have always been reluctant to get involved in intellectual property cases. Trade secrets, copyrights, patents, they tend to be more complicated. Sometimes they have a very complex technical component if it's in the semiconductor industry or in the optical industry. So the judges in China and Asia that are seeing these suits increase are going to get a lot of the training that's going to help them hone their skills, and it's going to help provide a judiciary that's going to be better positioned to deal with disputes between local players and then other countries coming into to Asian markets. And I think that's the highlights that I wanted to cover, and I think we'll leave it for the questions.
Okay, it's your time now, so I hope you have lots of questions, and I said that if you don't, then I have some really simple ones, so rather have yours. Yes?
I have a question for Professor Zheng. A very funny thing happened in China when I was working there. I did a joint venture with China Travel Service to build the first American motel in China. Senator Henry Jackson from Washington came to visit to see if there was freedom of travel in China. And the premier offered 1 million Chinese for him to bring back to the United States to test out that freedom. And I was wondering if that offer is still open because that could solve the unemployment problem here in the United States if your organization gives simply a popular product like photovoltaic panels. If you gave $1 million to Chinese industrialists to bring them over to teach Americans some light technology, which we need in this country for a light industrial revolution, that would fill our pretty vacant immigrant investor program. Most of the quota goes unused every year, and that'll be a way of promoting products as well as training people here in the States. So I was wondering if your organization funds the entrepreneurial light industrialists in China to come over to the United States with popular products.
Please.
Good questions. I don't know. For examples, I think in America, the entrepreneurial economy is a real one. In China, we want to establish a new module, new entrepreneurial economy modules. For examples, when we talk about the entrepreneurial economies in Americas, we call the two-coast war. One is one representative of is MIT. We found the new ideas from the new idea to industries. We call it it's differentiation modules.
Okay.
Yeah, in the west coast, for example, in the representative is the Stanford. They congregate all the factors together. In China, we also at the industry revolutionary industrialization first stage. A lot of people from just move from the countryside to the cities to find new work. But a lot of the international company like yours also establish the R&D centers in our countries. From the R&D to the new industry is a very, very long road, especially for China's company. Yeah, you do the companies for your country, for your companies. Yeah, now we should establish platforms, as I say, the MOP, multiple open platforms. Then also we can differentiate the new idea, new high-tech, new industry to become a new industry. It's a very, very big problems.
Yes, there are a couple of hands over there. Please. Hang on a second. Can we have a microphone? Can you come to the microphone here?
Hi. So I'm currently recharging at Sloan, but for the past couple of years, we've done consulting project for innovation demand in China. So one of the challenge we've seen is because the market is so vastly different across different regions, because of different level of economy development and also subculture. So Mr. Moeller, when you're talking about localize the auto industry for local demand, what do you find to be most effective ways of understanding consumer demand in different regions in China?
Thank you for this question. It's a very good question that all of my customers are dealing with on a daily basis. There are, of course, you need to do market research. So you need to do interviews, you need to speak to people. And there are various forms of doing that. I think one way that has proved particularly effective is what we call in our industry product clinics. So you actually expose the client to the potential future product in real terms. So you basically create a prototype of your new car, in my case, and put it in front of the customers. And the effect that you're alluding to means that you need to do this at least in the 16 provinces of China, but that's by way not enough. So you need to do this in more places. Most people that I know in my industry don't do that yet. So whilst there are products that are specifically for Chinese taste and they are different than the Japanese product or the European or the US product, I haven't seen anybody that hasn't yet diversified on a regional level. So for example, you could easily think about a southern Chinese car versus a northern Chinese car, but nobody has done that yet. There is clearly further room to grow in that area.
Yes, please.
This is a question for the panel. Clara Chow, Koehler Consulting Group. I've worked with a variety of companies on cross-border transactions, both startup to established companies and even in M&A. And this is more of an organizational questions to promote innovation. So the question is, how do you establish an organizational structure that can promote collaboration and innovation, but yet protect IP?
Any volunteers? Jim, it sounds like that would be you.
Yeah, I did hear IP in there. One thing that I find works is a lot of people across the the board are trying to find a way to get the right people to stand up and work together. And different engineering units will be developing things that are directly relevant to marketing and other parts of the business, and sometimes there's walls between them. One thing that we have seen, and we've kind of gone in and kind of co-run, is to have basically a process where people submit ideas that they're working on, and it goes to one committee, and the committee reviews them, and they basically go and they interview people, because one of the unfortunate things that happen is sometimes some of the most productive and the busiest engineers are the least reluctant to come forward. So it requires management or marketing to reach out to them, to collect information even at a high level, and then a group of marketing people, potentially in-house counsel, and some of the lead engineering CTO executives review those materials and then prioritize them in groups and then determine if there's going to be a reward system. So the reward can be the patent application filing, which is, for an engineer having that on their curriculum vitae is great, whether it's a plaque whether it's, we've seen people where they implement phased programs so that if you file something or if you provide the disclosure, if you just describe what you're working on and how it interacts with other people, that you get some kind of incentive reward, whether it's monetary or your own bonus or something that goes into your review. And then stepping that up into if the application actually gets filed because it was at the level that the management team thought it was worthwhile. And then if a patent ultimately issues, then it's, you know, another reward, whether it's money or a plaque or some kind of presentation at the company level.
Any other comments?
Yeah, maybe I can offer a perspective. I mean, certainly this is a very different challenge if you look at Western or Japanese companies going into the Chinese market versus the Chinese companies. So whilst Western companies, for example, have all these reward systems that James just alluded to in place, I have seen very little of that in Chinese companies. So if we talk about innovation champions from China, I think one of the key challenges is reward. That there needs to be mechanisms in place that actually encourage people to innovate, and certainly Professor Xu has alluded very detailed to what that takes, but in many companies that I visit on a daily basis in China, I haven't seen any of that in place. So that is certainly one of the key elements. The other is to actually encourage individuals to step up and step forward with their innovative ideas. That is something that doesn't come natural to anybody in China, so you really need to encourage people and train them and really make them feel that this is valued and something that you want them to do. It's also something we struggle with on a daily basis, by the way.
Okay, unfortunately, I think we're running out of time, and I'm going to ask the last question. Because I can. So let me ask your comments about kind of the history of how carbon fiber material was developed over a long period of time,
Right.
which is very typical of most materials, particularly new one, and so on. But you made a comment about management has to have a long-term vision, and it has to stick with it and be continuous and all that. And And then you put that chart that showed the Japanese companies that did and the rest of the world that didn't.
Yeah.
So, I mean, was there something particular about Japanese management that allowed you to do that, or was this an instance where, okay, it happened that way?
I think the, as I said in my presentation, that you know, perseverance or endurance or patience, those are key of the innovation of especially from the material development, new material, the market acceptance of new material takes time. So let's see. Yeah, that is kind of not only Japanese, but Asian people characteristics, and also Japanese companies and the investor or stockholder of Japanese company had not so, how can I say, aggressive or of the new short-time profit. Yeah. So that's why but Japanese stockholder kind of changing right now. But that kind of attitude of the stockholder helped that kind of long-term development, I believe.
Wonderful. Well, let me just then thank the panel for very interesting presentations on a very interesting topic. And kind of my last comment is, there are a lot of times when we think of innovation and business competition as zero-sum games. So we tend to think of, oh yeah, we're going to win, they're going to lose, we're losing our edge, and there's a lot of very interesting discussions going on in this country about how the U.S. is losing its competitive edge in innovation and so on. But I look at it differently. Basically, it is a global game now. It is a period of relative peaceful and quiet environment in the world, and everybody's evolving and growing and trying to improve their economic situation. And it's not a zero-sum game. The pie is getting bigger all the time, so we all benefit from it. Now, obviously, there's some balancing to get done, but I think that instead of thinking in terms of, uh-oh, they're doing something that's going to hurt us, it's they're doing something, we're all going to figure out a way of benefiting from this. And most importantly, people benefit from it. So I want to thank you all for listening. Thank you again for the panel, and we'll go to the next session.